Welcome to Dreamers to Doers, a refresh podcast where faith meets action. I'm your host, Sarah Birkbeck, and I am so excited for this interview today. Before we dive in, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, share, and honestly, tell us about your dreams. Tell us what God is stirring in your heart. We want to know. So leave a comment, and we'd be excited to hear from you. Today, we're going to hear from my dear friend, Caroline Harries, who founded and runs an organization called Moms in the Making. I am so excited to hear the story of how she moved from a dreamer to a doer. Join me. Welcome, Caroline, to the Dreamers to Doers podcast. I am really excited to get to have my sweet friend on here. Sad we're not in the same room. I am weirdly have flown to Orlando to do this, and you are my neighbor in Frisco, and somehow we're not together doing this interview. I'm not sure how that's happening.
You feel very far away right now.
I know, but I just love that normally we are not far away and we're able to just go grab lunch, and I've loved just the gift that you've been to me. And I can't even remember the first time we met, but meeting and knowing, I think it was like our eyes lit up knowing, oh my goodness, you're running an organization. You're just this boss girl who's just doing it on your own. I don't think at that time you maybe had one employee or no, I don't know. You were in this phase where you're like, we're just grinding it out. We're doing it. 501c3, we were figuring out our taxes, and we both just lit up because we're like, we are in this boat together. We are both figuring this out. And so it was really encouraging. I've loved getting to know you and just feel so thankful to have you on and a part today. I think this is going to be a really sweet story to get the background of Caroline and the things that you've built are so incredible and beautiful, and from the outside eye of just like, this is amazing. And so can you just start by telling us a little bit about Moms in the Making and what you guys are doing today?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. This truly is an honor, and I just love you so much. And I echo all those sentiments. Like when we first met, it was like, you are my people. And really, it's just been this friendship of how can we come alongside each other and support one another. And so super thankful for you and very, very grateful for this podcast because I think this is a need. People need to hear people's stories. So I'm just cheering you on in Dallas, Texas. So so Moms in the Making really goes back to, let me start with my husband and I getting married back in 2011. And we decided pretty quickly that we were ready for children. And the doctor said, nope, that's not going to happen. They did some tests on both of us and said, not happening. Well, soon after that, the Lord really put it on my heart to have women over to my living room. And I did. I invited some who I knew, some who were friends of friends. I think I posted on a church bulletin that I was starting an infertility support group. And so, Sarah, that began in 2013, I believe it was, in June of 2013. Just 6 women gathering around, diving into God's word. And that's really expanded to what we're doing now, which is officially called Moms in the Making. It is a faith-based fertility support group. So we come alongside women who are believing God for babies, but struggling to conceive. Perhaps they're struggling to stay pregnant and they're experiencing miscarriage, or maybe they're struggling just to get pregnant. 1 in 6 couples do go through infertility. So super high statistics. So we now, what started my living room expanded worldwide. We now have 82 groups across the world. We're in other languages. We're in Spanish and Dutch as well. And then, as you know, because you've been one of our amazing speakers, we have an annual conference. So that's really kind of the high level overview of what Moms in the Making is and how it got started.
And I got the honor and privilege, not just to speak, but to get to be at the conference. And that was such a gift to me. And I did not struggle with infertility, but just to get to be there and hear the hope that you guys bring to the room in just the way you guys speak and worship and lead these women into a hope. It was really beautiful. And it was such an honor to just get to be there. And so I love what you're doing. I'm so thankful that you're doing it because it is needed. And like you said, that it's so much. There's so much, and there's so much pain, and there's so much hurt, and a lot of it unseen. And so
Mhm.
I think it's really powerful
Yeah.
that um and this has been birthed out of your pain and out of
Mm.
your challenges and out of your adversity. And we've seen that weaved through a lot of these interviews of
Mhm.
just purpose getting birthed from a place of struggle. And it's actually really powerful to see so many of these stories that are all so unique. I mean, I've interviewed some just really different, just unique situations, different,
Yeah.
and it is really powerful to see that 95% of it has come from their own struggles and challenges. And so I just honor you and I admire you for
Mm.
being willing to say yes, even
Mm.
in the hardship, and not saying, when you got married, like, once I get my miracle or once we
Mhm.
have kids, because you don't have kids still, and
Still.
not saying, I'm going to wait until X and then I'll start that ministry because I know I'll be able to minister to these women. And so I really honor you for that. I feel like it's really beautiful. So I want to go back. I love your story because it's just so powerful to see a woman who not just gets an idea, but is willing to, like,
Mhm.
all right, I see that. I'm
Let's
going to
do
invite
this.
these girls over to my living room because I
Yes.
can. So take me back to
Which
that.
I love because that's your
I
story,
know.
right?
That's
Is to lead
probably why I
women.
love it so
So,
much.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so take me back to, when this kind of sparked in you for the first time, and maybe even after you invited them for the first time. Because a lot of times it's like, man, we get this idea from the Lord. It's so awesome. It's so exciting. And then we actually step out and you're like, I don't know. What am I doing? What was kind of some of the challenges you were facing as you were starting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of it, right?
Yeah.
What am I doing is a challenge. What is the format? What will this look like? Like, are we just going to get together and have conversation? Are we going to dive into a curriculum or a book? And so I think when you don't have a blueprint,
Mm.
you really do go back to the Lord and say,
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, help me. What is the blueprint? And I'm so thankful for his wisdom. But I think I probably faced some challenges that any person who has an idea from the Lord faces as well. And that is, what does this look like? How do I facilitate this? What is this? What
Yeah.
if no one
Yeah.
comes?
Oh, that's a
What
big one.
if
That's a
no one
big
comes?
one. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. Yeah. And so those are probably some things I think I was thinking at the time. Honestly, Sarah, now that it's been 10 years, it's a little kind of farther removed. I mean, I can definitely tell you some testimonies that came out of those beginning days. The challenges I don't recall
Mm.
as much. I will say, Sarah, and I think probably so many people can relate to this, is what happened is there was 6 people in a room and they were like,
Hmm.
finally, there's a safe place. Finally, there's one
Yeah.
who get it. Finally, I don't have to explain why I
Yeah.
don't have
Wow.
children. And I think that's probably maybe how a widow
Mm.
would feel if they went
Mhm.
to a widow group or they were in a living room with other widows, is like everyone in
Yeah.
this room gets it. And I think maybe this isn't as helpful because I'm not quite answering your question, but I think I almost remember those moments more than I do the challenges. But I have no doubt that the challenges were there. Perhaps the testimony out of what I'm communicating is the positives
Mm.
and the blessings and the praise reports outweigh those challenges that I did
That's
face at
just
the
so
time.
powerful. And I think, I just always think, like, what if you hadn't, you know? What if you just
Mm-hmm.
didn't? What if you were like, I need to wait till,
Crazy.
or I need to focus on having kids because that's what I want right now. And so what if you
Yeah.
hadn't, I mean, that's a powerful thought
My
too.
life, I mean, it changed the trajectory of my life because now I am doing this full time. My husband is now doing this full time with me. So we've both left our corporate jobs. I mean, our life has been forever changed because of that first yes in the living room.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Okay. So
Yeah.
tell me, did you always know, maybe before this, that had you always felt called to ministry? Did you always know that there was something significant on your life that you were going to be doing?
That's a great question, Sarah. Definitely no to a call to ministry. Absolutely not. I would say probably the last thing I ever thought I would I was doing. People as a little girl are like, one day, or even as a teenager or college student, one day I would love to be a pastor or do. My goal in my heart was to be a financial analyst and work my way up the corporate ladder. And that's what I was doing at the time when Moms in the Making first started. And my husband was working for the government, and that's what he would have saw. Actually, the career he had, it's a career that you retire with. So we were business people in the corporate world doing our thing. So I would say this is the last thing I ever thought I would be doing. Now, the other part of me can tell you, I had led Bible studies. I had led small groups. I had gone through other prior hardships in life. And I do, looking back now, I'm like, oh, I was actually the one that would kind of lead the charge on encouraging others in those seasons through different online forums. And I think it was like Yahoo chats and things like that.
Oh, yes. That's crazy.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah.
So I think to a degree, I can see, wait, Lord, you were using me at these different ages and stages in life. But to answer your question, never thought I would be in ministry full time.
Wow. And so from the time that you started in your living room and you gathered people, was that when you were like, oh, I'm going to do this. This is Moms in the Making. Or was there a season between kind of starting that and feeling like, I really think this needs to be an organization and we need to do more with this?
Yeah, I love this question. And so to provide some context, when I started my living room was 2013. We started to see so much growth. I mean, I have no idea how many people walked through my living room over those years, but 50,
Wow.
100. I mean, it was a lot of women. And so we saw so much healing and breakthrough. And so people were coming in saying, well, I just want a baby. But we were talking about hard things, about bitterness and jealousy and just the hardship that comes with the journey. And so hearts were being healed. We had women who were praying out loud for the first time. Marriages were being restored. And so God, you could see, was all over it, and he was on it. And I think honestly, it's because we put him first and we sought him first, and you seek him first and he'll add everything else, as it says in Matthew 6:33. But from when I started my living room 2013, we actually didn't have our first conference until 2017. And then we started launching groups at the beginning of 2018. So it was a good 4 years until we became an official nonprofit. And it was 4 years until I quit my job to pursue it full time. So it definitely wasn't some overnight success or, overnight transformation. There was a process and there was this time aspect. And it did just come to this point where it's like, it was obvious that there was a need, but also that God was leading us to start multiplying and sending out other leaders across the United States. So we didn't start that until 2018.
Okay, so take me to when you quit your job and you're like, okay, we're going to start a 501c3. I hope this works out. Were you just kind of one of those people who's like, I can see it, I've got vision, I'm all in, I'm like wheels blazing? Or did you struggle with doubt? Did you ever think like, maybe this is a bad idea, turn around, let's go back to my job? I don't know.
Sarah, I was like, I kicked and I screamed like a little child. I knew that I was supposed to quit my job. The grace completely lifted at my workplace. And I had been there 11 years. So it wasn't just like I had a lot of favor there. The Lord was doing a lot. And when I knew that he was calling me to quit, he made it obvious too. So that grace lifted. But no, I was hesitant, honestly. I mean, my flesh being like, hey, we have 2 salaries. This is great. So it's the practical of going from 2 salaries to 1 and then taking this leap of faith. And that's exactly, honestly, Sarah, what it was. It was a big leap. It was uncomfortable. I put it off for a long time. I was definitely disobedient. But then once I took that leap and I made that decision, it was also very freeing. And we both know there's a peace that comes when you know that like you're where you're supposed to be. And then the Lord called my husband to quit his job in 2022. And I kicked and I screamed and I was like, I mean, you probably remember me telling you, like, I was like, absolutely not. This is your career. Like people in his positions, they don't quit. And I found, honestly, Sarah, a lot of my identity was in what he did. And so the Lord was stripping things away from me and where my confidence was and where my security was. And I mean, we had so many conversations about it, and he got to the point, and Colby, he's like so quiet and chill and go with the flow, and he doesn't have like, his voice doesn't range. He's just steady. And he got to the point one day and he's like, if you have a problem with it, you have to take it up with God, because I won't be disobedient with him. And so he took the leap of faith and quit his too. And I think my encouragement for anyone listening, if it is some kind of leap of faith like that, is if the Lord's calling you to it, he is going to take care of you. And he has. He's been so faithful to take care of Colby and I in this season since he stepped back from his salary as well. And truly, there's no better place to be than in the will of
Amen.
God.
I just want to touch on that too, because I think there's a real reality and I love that you shared even working through some of your own, like what you were really holding on to with Colby's job, not even just working through that with your job, but then now with Colby's and the security piece and all of that. And I think there's a real reality to, a lot of these things that happen in the spirit, like when we are in prayer or in the word and in worship and the Lord's speaking and we know where he's calling us and we know what he's asking us to step into. And it's like, we've got this bold, courageous faith to do it and to say yes. And then there's the reality of the world that we live in. And we just live in this natural world. And so sometimes it's like, then we come back out of that space and we're just living in these natural challenges and things that pop up. And we really do need health insurance and like actual real life natural things. How do you, I don't even know the question because I didn't write this down, but this is a question for me. Yes. I'm like, I want to know how do you live with that, in that tension? Because you guys have obviously done a lot of stepping out in faith and continue to live your life in that way. How do you live in that tension that's reality?
This is so good because I was wanting to touch on this anyways as we've been talking. Because to your point, it hasn't just been with us stepping out to pursue ministry and where we felt like God's calling us to lead. It's been how we really handled Colby's recent cancer diagnosis and then where we're at believing God for babies. And Sarah, really to me, a lot of what scripture is it talks about us being set apart. And that, yes, we live in this world, but we are not of this world. And so I think coming to this realization that, look, are you going to deal with these different doubts and fears? Absolutely. But when you're obedient to God, he's going to bless you and he's going to take care of you. Now, the tricky part is, Sarah, is a lot of people aren't going to understand. A lot of people aren't going to understand. And there's got to be this moment where you wrestle with the Lord and you say, Lord, I would rather be obedient to you and follow what you're telling me to do than please my family members and please my friends and please my coworkers. Because did I disappoint coworkers when I quit my job? Probably. Have I disappointed family members who really their heart's desire for me was to have this great business corporate job? Probably. Actually, I know I have. I can confidently say that. Do people understand how we approach Colby's cancer journey or how we're approaching our journey for babies? They don't. And so I'm not saying don't be on the same page with your spouse because, of course, unity is super important. But at the end of the day, as long as Colby and I are in unity, and we are following God, we've got to come to this point where we are not trying to please man and we are not trying to get the approval of man. And that's hard. And so there is this wrestle, but I know like deep down when I get to heaven, he's not going to say, oh, good job. You made everyone around you happy. No, he's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. You obeyed me and you listened to me and you didn't look to the left or the right. And so that's hard. So, but Holy Spirit empowers us.
And that's powerful. And hearing that from you, and you just kind of breezed over Colby's cancer diagnosis too. I mean, we haven't even gone there. We've obviously talked about the infertility journey, but now this has been a more recent thing, and your faith and your tenacity to continue to press in and press forward with boldness, and the way you are set apart is really inspiring and incredible, because it has not just all unfolded for you or come easy. And I don't think that's what we're invited into when the Lord welcomes us into a journey and a life with him. I don't think it's a life that is like easy and rainbows and butterflies. I really think he's inviting us in to these challenges that are forging something in us. But what do you feel like? Okay, so obviously so much was birthed out of your challenges with wanting to have children. This challenge with Colby has been recent. What do you feel like is some of your current, maybe your current, and maybe not around that, but what are some of your current challenges with the organization, with your family life, and but also what's some of your greatest hope, and what's the Lord forging in you through what you're walking through now?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this opportunity, Sarah, to be processing all of this with him. So here I am leading this ministry now for 10 years or 5 years since we've been an official 501c3. And I've celebrated over 500 women become pregnant that had once barren wombs through, they've become a member of the ministry and receive their miracle baby. And yet Colby and I are still contending and believing for our own children. And that's a story in of itself. And then, as you brought up, then he gets diagnosed with cancer on top of that. So I think there's this opportunity with anyone and everyone that we've got to be real and raw with God, with our time to lament and to take our discouragement to him and really take our disappointment to him. And I will say, for me, that personally is actually, I have to work for that. I am very much, if we were to look at personality tests, the sun is always shining, the grass is always green. There's always reason to have hope. And there is, because hope is a person and he lives on the inside of us. But I actually have to work at processing the disappointment with him and handling that. And I think if we don't, we're really just stuffing it. And at some point we're probably going to blow up. And that's, I believe, what does lead ministers and pastors and leaders to burnout, is them not being real with what they're going through. And so, yes, there's been many challenges, but man, I look back and I just see the faithfulness of God weaved all throughout our story. And even through cancer, as we were able to invite him in and declare scripture and use spirit-led strategy, we just saw testimony after testimony of what he did to protect Colby and to heal Colby, which we're very much thankful for. And so, sometimes it's hard in the trenches, but I think there's such an opportunity and truly an invitation that we get to encounter God as someone we wouldn't have if we weren't going through that. I did not need to know God as healer in the way I needed him last summer through Colby's chemo treatments. The next person might not need to know God as provider as when they both quit their job to pursue the dream that God's put on their heart. So it's this invitation of, wow, Lord, I never would have seen that facet of your face, of your character, of your nature, if I had not walked through that. And so I think with any trial and any challenge, there's always so much beauty that can be found in it.
And I love that. You are just like, your podcast is called A Cup Full of Hope. And I'm like, you are just a ball of hope, and incredible how God created you in that way. And even to take what I know is not like that's happened 10 years ago and you've worked through all these things, but a very fresh situation, and still be able to see, and not just like, oh, the glass is half full, but really see it through the eyes of Christ and understand what you have gained, and to see the benefit of your relationship with the Lord and these eternal things that you've gained versus just the comfort that you might have looked for in this world. So it's an incredible thing that's who I love how God made you. But I also love that you are willing to share that with people. You're willing to put
Mm.
yourself out there constantly and give away the hope that God has given you on a regular basis. And I really I admire that about you. Tell me this, is it ever a challenge for you to put yourself out there? And I know for myself, and I'm not even speaking from a whole lot of personal experiences or tragedies, which is where some of your ministry is coming from. Is it ever just feel vulnerable or hard, or like, you're walking through your school naked feelings?
Every day.
Okay.
No,
I'm
probably not
not
every day, but
alone.
yes. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
girl. I mean, you were at our conference last year after I got off stage and I shared some very vulnerable things. I was like, I will go crawl in a hole right now and hide, and I hope I never see anyone again. So I think that's so real. And I think really, honestly, Sarah, Colby and I are still trying to navigate that tension where we have had these moments where we haven't found that it's hard to just take God at his word and trust him and believe that he is who he says he is and he will do what he says he will do. What we have actually found is it's the pushback from other people. And I mean, we've received letters in the mail from close people to us saying, "You're crazy. Like, God isn't healer. What are you doing? You're going to die." And so there's been this grace and peace from the Lord from, top down, from heaven to earth. It's the people aspect that I think being vulnerable can be a little tricky with. And so I'm still figuring out, what does that look like? How do you lead such a public ministry, but also protect your story? And I think vulnerability is powerful, but I also think it's important to know, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, that people aren't going to understand, that you're going to get critical statements. You're going to get the haters who attack you. You're going to get the mean people who don't understand. And you're going to have some of your closest family and friends push back as well. And I was actually just thinking about this verse in Matthew where it talks about how we build our foundation on the solid rock of Jesus Christ himself. And I think that's why we have to make sure that he's our foundation, so that when those storms come, whether it's infertility or cancer or something else, or when the people attack, that we know that we will stay strong and that we will continue to run the course well.
That is so good and so powerful. Okay, so what is your hope in this next 5, 10 years for moms in the making? And now dads in the making.
I know. Well, that would have been my answer. Yes. So we just launched Dads in the Making. So for years, the women have been like, what about our husbands? And what we've really found is these women encounter so much encouragement. They find their community, they go to group or they come to their conference, and they are radically different. And then they say, but what about my husband? And so Dads in the Making got delayed a little bit because of what Colby walked through with his health, but essentially it launched. So we are now doing Dads in the Making. He's leading a group right now for men. Yes. And it's been sweet. And it's not for every man, which is totally fine. Moms in the Making is not going to be for every person either. But I think the dads have been like, finally, there's a place for me. So, my heart, Sarah, is that we would have a Moms in the Making group in every single city, but I know that is a
Come on.
long-term vision.
I love
And
that.
until then, we're just still doing what we're doing, which is birthing hope in the wait. So I'm glad you've brought up hope many times. I'm like, okay, good. She's caught
Yes.
it. We're doing something right, that you've picked up on just
100%. But I caught it because it is what you carry. And that's what's so beautiful about you, Caroline, having stepped out in this way. And I think it just speaks so much to, honestly, anyone listening, is that there's just everyone is built so unique, and I am not built like you. And I am able to listen to you and feel like my hope is, or like I am stirred in hearing what is coming out of you and what comes out of your ministry. And And I just keep going back to, what if you hadn't? Like, what if you didn't open your living room that day and just decided, I need to sort myself out. I need to make sure, we need to start a fam. Like, what if you hadn't? And I just think and yeah, could someone else have started a group like this? Maybe, but what's on your life that you carry is so unique and so special. And lives, I mean, thousands of lives have been changed, men and women, like we've just learned, and babies, the next generation that have come into this world because you were willing to say yes and step out. It is just such a powerful thought and so encouraging.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I love that. Well, no, I was just going to say, and I hope this encourages whoever's listening. Sarah, I feel like, and I'm sure you would say the same, and probably anyone else would agree as well. I've never had the thought of what if I hadn't, but now that you say that, going back to what I said earlier, the trajectory of my life would be different among many other people's lives as well. I will say, I think my story is one of lots of little yeses. I can tease the Lord a little bit saying, had I known you would have asked both Colby and I to quit our job, peace out.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Had I known you would have asked me to put on these events and conferences, which you host events and conferences, and it's like a full-time job. Had I known, no, thank you. But isn't he so kind? I feel like I've just said lots of little yeses along the way. Yes, Lord, I will obey you here. Yes, Lord, I will do what you're saying here. And it's really now, 10 years later, you look back and be like, wow, that's the power of a yes. And so for anyone listening, you don't need to figure out the 20-year vision and make it happen overnight. What is the Lord asking you to do today? And say yes. And then he will take you and he will help you and provide for you until you get to the next month where he's asking you to say yes again.
And that's just a powerful, what a journey. Had you known, maybe you'd be like, no, I don't think so. But hasn't it been just fun? Like a wild, crazy fun, not always easy, but amazing journey that you've been on. And you kind of just answered my last question. We're just speaking to the person that maybe is just sitting there thinking they've got something in their heart, but just don't know where to go from here. And I think that statement was just perfectly answered that. So, yeah, I feel like I already know you, but I just think that even in this, it's so beautiful to see the tapestry that the Lord weaves together. And we've seen this in every kind of interview that I've done so far, is just what he worked out in you and the beauty that has come for you and Colby. Because you said all these little yeses too. And it's like, man, if it was just for the one, like if it was just for me, I was even talking about this podcast. I'm like, I don't know who will ever listen to be on the other side of the podcast. But you know what? There has been a lot, one, forged in me just to like say yes and do it, because these things aren't always easy. And then two, just to get to sit and hear these stories and be encouraged. And, but then he doesn't just do it for the one. He will multiply if you are willing to submit it to him and look at the thousands of people's lives that have been changed because of your yeses. And it's beautiful. And I don't doubt that won't move to the hundreds of thousands as you get into every city, not just you and what you've created, but what God has created through you. And so it's really powerful and exciting and beautiful. And let's finish with this, a fun finisher. Okay, so I want to know how you get your brave on. And I know that everyone I ask this question to, they're going to say either reading the word, worshiping, or praying. So yes, those are probably your top 3 things that you will get your brave on with. We all will. But I want to know, maybe what's your number 4 thing that you get your brave on with?
Sarah, you're putting me on the spot.
I know. I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was going to ask you that one. Maybe it's like dancing through your living room. I don't know.
Oh, I do like dancing. I told Colby I want to be one of the flag ladies at church that waves the flag. I'm like, can I be a flag lady? So I do like dancing. Going for a month are getting like some endorphins pumped up, something outside in nature,
Yes.
doing something physical. Love that. We are very outdoorsy people and very active.
That is a good one.
And this might be one of the disqualifiers, but maybe listening to other people who are like passionate. So maybe it's listening to that podcast where someone's like pumped up, gets me pumped up.
That's so good though. Those are great practical things. I think that was great. And I just saw,
I don't want to fail.
Those you did, because those were, but all three were, all two were outside of, the standard. So it was good. I saw that you're going to be swimming in a lake. What are you doing? This is you getting your brave on. You're going to feel like $1 million when you do it. And you're like, yeah.
Well, once I finish, I was just telling a friend the thing, like I've done half marathons. The thing with doing a half marathon is you get tired of running. You just walk. Who cares?
Okay.
You can't just stop swimming in a lake. You will drown.
Yeah.
So I don't make the best decisions, Sarah, when it comes to the races, because it's kind of always this ongoing joke. So I have to be extra dramatic. Like I don't train for them. I sign up a month before. I don't know what I'm doing. I just show up. Like
Caroline.
It's just, don't take training tips from me because it's a little humorous.
Okay. So when is this? I need to know.
In 4 weeks.
Stop. My favorite thing.
So I'm ahead of schedule. I did a training swim yesterday. It was my first one. So I'm like, this for me is like ahead of schedule.
In the pool.
It's a mile. In the pool, which is not the lake. You're like being kicked in the face. You can't see where you're going. The water's dark. I had joked yesterday on Instagram and people were very confused. There's dead bodies.
Yeah.
Should not have said that because people didn't know I was being silly, but then am I being silly? Because
okay. First of all, that was the part I actually wanted you to say because I saw that yesterday and I laughed so hard. And then my second thought was, I know she was joking and that's funny, but I was like, maybe there are dead bodies in there, Caroline. You just never know.
Probably sharks. I mean, sticks. Who knows? Who knows what we'll find in Lake Louisville these days?
Okay, well, we want to know how that goes after you swim that mile.
I hope I'm able to report back. No, I'm going to do it.
You are going to do it, and you're going to be like so brave after that because that's how you get your brave on. Brave. I love it.
That is how I get my brave on.
Oh, this was so fun. I am just so thankful for you to give us a little glimpse behind the curtain of Caroline and all of the things that God's doing in your life, and just so honored to have you on. So thank you for all that you shared. Tell everyone how and where and when and all the things that they can find you and the Moms in the Making conference that's coming up. Can you share all of those things?
October 6th and 7th. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you want to connect with Yes. So if you want to connect with me, I'm In Due Time Ministries on Instagram and Facebook. That's my website as well. And my heart for In Due Time really is to offer hope to anyone who's in a waiting or hard season. And as Sarah mentioned, A Cup Full of Hope podcast, talk a lot about just theology. Sarah's been on. You can listen to that episode. And then Moms in the Making is everywhere on socials and website, momsinthemaking.com. And as Sarah said, we have a conference October 6th and 7th here in Dallas. We have women come from all over the world. We'd love to have you at that, or you can get connected in one of our groups. So if you know someone who's struggling to grow their family, please pass it along, because that's a great way to love on someone who's going through infertility when you don't know what else to do, is provide a hope-filled resource where they can connect with other women on the journey.
I love that. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, until next time, we're so grateful, Caroline, to have you on. We'll see you soon.